Welcome to Mythos in Media, where I break down your favorite TV shows, movies, video games, and anime from the perspective of a published author. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Dandadan Episode 7, To a Kinder World. Now, if you're here, you've probably watched the episode already, but in case you don't watch this series or you just don't watch anime at all, don't click away. You can still enjoy this video. The part I want to talk about can be appreciated on its own. You don't need to have any previous knowledge of the plot, and trust me, it will be worth it. Plus, I will give you every detail you need to understand it. Of course, if you want to go and watch the series or you want to go watch the episode, you can go ahead and do that and then come back here because spoilers are in full effect. Anyway, my name is Carlos. I'm the author of White Harbor, an award-winning supernatural horror trilogy, which you're seeing on your screen right now. You can find the links in the description so that you can get the books and also so you can follow me on my socials. But enough chit-chat, we're here for Dandadan Episode 7, and if you're watching this, I don't think I need to tell you what a beautiful episode of television this is. It caught everyone by surprise. In the middle of a series about recovering your lost balls from ghosts and aliens wanting to gently sever your banana organs, we get this masterpiece of emotional storytelling. I'm going to just rush over the first half of the episode because I know that's not why you're here, right? Let's just say masterful animation, insane chaotic action, and everything we've come to love about this anime is encapsulated in these first 10 minutes. What you do need to know is this spirit here, known as the acrobatic Silky. Yes, I know that's the most anime name that you have ever heard, but bear with me. She fights using acrobatic movements and her hair as a weapon. Anyway, this spirit developed an obsession with this girl named Ira, because when she was a little kid, Ira saw the spirit and mistakenly called her Mommy. Now, Silky is so obsessed with Ira, she actually wants to eat her. Get your mind out of the gutter, people. If she eats her, they'll become one and they'll be together forever. The problem is, when she actually does this, she kills Ira. Now, realizing what she did, Silky asks this other girl, Momo, to use her powers to connect them, passing her aura or her life force into Ira's body, saving her life, kind of like jumper cables for the soul. And to prove she actually means to help, she even rips out her own jaw to show that she will not attempt to devour Ira again. Seeing that Silky means no harm, Momo does this. She uses her power to connect them, and that's when we get our main event. Now, even though I'm glossing over half the episode to get to this, the first half is incredibly important in the writing because it misleads us. It lowers our defenses. We think, oh, okay, so this is what we're getting. Action and anime battles. I'm ready for it. Let's go. It's a masterful trick. It's sleight of hand. It's the series saying, look over there, with one hand, while with the other, it janks our heart out. Then it does just that. The moment Momo uses her spiritual jumper cables, we get to see into Silky's memories. There's so much detail packed into these 10 minutes that it's almost impossible to catch everything on your first watch. And that's why I'm doing this video. You see, since I'm a writer, I thought, what if I had to narrate the story to you, highlighting those little details, show you what you might have missed? Yes, the manga and the anime are visual, but narration doesn't have that option. I have to create that visual in your head. So now, even though I'm going to go through the scene here on video, because after all, this is a video channel and you don't want to be staring at a blank screen, I'm going to narrate the story as if I had written it in a book. Go easy on me. This might not be as polished as an actual novel that goes through endless rounds of editing, but I still hope you like this, and if you do, I might do this for other scenes in the future. Just a warning, this episode deals with some heavy subjects of the adult variety, so proceed with caution. And of course, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content. This is a new channel, and each of those interactions from you helps me grow. Now that said, 3, 2, 1, let's go. As she opened her eyes, she was greeted by stars, a night sky, but she soon realized an artificial one, projected on glass, framed by walls on every side, contained. Handprints on the glass surface, as if many had once reached for that sky, only to be thwarted by this barrier and the ceiling beyond. How had they even reached that high in the first place? Red light made the surroundings disorienting, dreamlike, unreal. Was this real? She thought, feeling groggy and exhausted, her body aching and sore. If she were to turn her head, survey the room, notice the open square plastic wrapper on the marble headboard, her clothes strewn without care around the room, and the wastebasket full of used tissues and even more discarded wrappers, she'd be reminded of just how real it all was. It smelled like sweat and humanity. As she was about to allow the belief to seep in that maybe, just maybe, she'd woken up not from a dream, but into one, and none of this was real, her alarm beeped, loud, cruel, forcing reality upon her, bringing an unarguable end to that brief rest she always allowed herself after. A tray on the checkered floor held the key to the Love Hotel's room, along with 3 bills, telling her what an hour of her body was worth. He couldn't even leave it on the headboard, she sighed. Had to make me reach for the floor to get it. First things first, though, that damned alarm. Outside, raindrops hit the asphalt without mercy as she walked home like she did every night, the umbrella giving her a cold but comforting sense of anonymity. She was invisible to those people around her, the real people, living carefree lives, going out with friends without a worry in the world. Karaoke night or not? She wished those were options for her. As she turned by the store at the corner, she noticed something new. Behind that window she passed every night, where all the pretty ballerina dresses mocked her with memories of everything she could have been, of dreams long abandoned, there was a red dress. Not quite red, but off-red. A hot pink. She'd love it, she thought. It was different, not your usual dancing dress, but that was exactly why she'd love it. It didn't matter, though. There was a pane of thick glass there, a mocking reminder like the glass in that red room separating her from the fake reflected stars. This one separated her from the expensive red dress. Only here, it was the dress that felt real. Her reflection made her feel fake, a pretender, a person that didn't exist, someone she wasn't. A person who could ever afford something like that. Once at her doorstep, she pawed around her bag for her keys. The polished doorknob cast her reflection back at her, the reminder of the fake person, the one who could. But now, without the red dress as comfort, just her plain self. It made her spirit sink, resigned. She sighed. The world was dim, dark, and colorless around her. As she pulled the door open and warm light bathed her face, a figure exploded out of the apartment, pushing the door open, letting more light out. It grabbed her. She glanced down, shaken out of her thoughts, jolted out of the darkness. There she was, her little girl of almost 4, an entire being made of smiles and laughter, hugging her legs, looking up at her with a gap-toothed grin from where she'd recently lost her first milk tooth. Her hair was tied in pigtails, and an orange flower held in place a single lock that framed her forehead. After a stunned second, it hit her. If she'd brought something this beautiful and perfect into the world, what couldn't she do for her? She could be that other person from the reflection. For her. Crouching to face her, she returned a beaming smile and said, "Tadaima," before picking up her beautiful girl in her arms and stepping into the safety of their home. The darkness, the shadows, all left outside. She started her second job, mopping floors. Other parents took their children out for ice cream as she toiled in the shadows. All for her, she thought, a mantra stealing her resolve. She's worth it. She might not have been able to become a dancer, but when she saw the joy in her daughter's face as she practiced standing on her tippy toes, when she saw how much effort she put into matching the pose of the dancers in her magazines, it was all worth it. All for her. Moments bathed in the warmth and the sunlight. Then came her third job, a convenience store, serving customers who didn't even spare a look at her. It was all right. She was used to it. She might as well have been invisible in her other 2 jobs, even if one of them required her to be uncomfortably close with her clients. This one was no different. She's worth it. She bought her daughter ballet slippers. She got them several sizes too big on purpose. She was growing up so fast, and she couldn't afford to buy new shoes every year or every few months, so these would do just fine for practice. And look, Look how much she loves them, she thought. Even if they're too big for her feet, her back leg is now rising so much higher, even as high as mine. She works so hard. Soon she'll be able to keep it as steady as I do. I'm so proud of her. All for her. She's worth it. Dinner at home was always a celebration. It was like light emanated from her daughter no matter what was on the plate, even through the sliding glass door that separated the kitchen from the living room, which sat in shadows to save on electricity. It didn't matter if they had to use toilet paper instead of napkins to save a little money. She's worth it. Her job cycled endlessly, one faceless client after the next. She was so tired, so exhausted. Morning came and she didn't notice the light. All she wanted was to lay there, unmoving, asleep, so tired. But where the sunlight wouldn't do to make her rise, her little girl would. Just a few more minutes, please, she thought. I'm too tired. Too tired. No. She can't see this. She can't see it. She can't see how tired I am. Nothing should break that smile. I'm only playing asleep. That's it. I'm only playing asleep. Yes, here we go. Gotcha! The squeal of surprised laughter when she pounced on her was all the strength she needed to go on. All for her. One more client, 3 more bills. Keep going. That damn alarm. Oh, wrong alarm. Food is ready, she realized as her little girl came bouncing toward her. She had turned the alarm off for her. She was helping in her own way, keeping her spirits up. Time rolled by in the sunlight's warmth. Pictures, moments, laughter, dancing, so much dancing in the light. She noticed stains on her daughter's frog sweater, stains that hadn't come off after washing them. She needed to get her new clothes. Maybe this was the right time? 3 bills, she thought as she counted the money in the envelope. I can afford it, right? I can be late with 1 payment? Just this once? The surprise and joy on her little face as she pulled the red dress, her birthday present, out of the box would have been worth every bill in that envelope. That day, she danced in her favorite dress, 1 more sticker on the wall, same as every year. She was getting so tall, so beautiful, yet every moment with her was still a childish celebration. At night, as the 4 candles on her birthday cake made her joyful face glow, she felt as if she'd plucked one of the stars from the night sky, the real night sky beyond her window pane, and brought it to stand in front of her, lighting up her world. A perfect day. It was worth it. As a pleasant silence settled in her living room, her little girl fell asleep on her lap, exhausted from all that dancing and all that celebrating, not having taken her beautiful dress off for a single second of the day. She looked out through the sliding doors at the wonderful night sky. The stars glowed soothingly on her, and though, as always, a pane of glass stood between them, they seemed closer. It felt as if she could simply slide the door open and fly up into the sky, her little girl in her arms. Screams cut through the night. Tears ran down her terrified face. She cried in terror, watching as the man pushed her mother's face forcefully to the floor. He said as thick fingers transferred the man's entire weight onto her body. She looked at her little girl, at her fear, her confusion, her little red dress, no longer a comfort. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. This was my fault, she berated herself as her baby wiped away tears that wouldn't stop coming. Just this once had been once too many, and they were here to collect. She was late with her payment, but she was missing only 3 bills, 3 little bills, worth more than her body, worth more than her. She clutched at the floor. She must protect her baby. It was the only thing that mattered. She pushed the man off her with all her strength, ran toward her precious girl. He spat, taking her by her long hair and pulling her back. How many men had done this? How many for 3 little bills had done this? But this one was different. Same appraisal of her humanity, different intention. This one threw her back as if she were an object, as if she were nothing. The sliding glass doors gave under her weight and fell off the rails. The sound of shattering glass intermingled with the sharp note of her daughter's screams. Shards dug into her skin, opening gashes that bled, staining the glass crimson. Lying there on the floor, she heard her daughter sniffle, taking in ragged breaths, and in those breaths, she heard her horror, the unfairness of how reality had come crashing into their perfectly imperfect little bubble of happiness, where she'd been safe from the cruelty of the world. Then she heard her tiny bare foot take a step toward her, and she panicked. "No, stay away!" Too late. A sound, two bodies colliding. Her little girl's footsteps stopped suddenly. Then her baby's screams intensified, and as she turned fierce eyes toward her, the unspeakable was unfolding. Her baby held under that man's arm as if she were an object to carry, as if she were nothing. No, she wasn't nothing. She was everything. Couldn't they see that? Maybe they saw that. Maybe that was their cruel way of punishing her for one little mistake, taking everything. How dare they? Don't touch her! She sprung into action, ignoring the new cuts opening in her hands and feet, the glass shards sliding out of her open wounds, freeing gushes of blood, staining everything. It didn't matter. Primal instinct took over. She crawled on all fours across the floor, a bear charging to protect her cub, ready to pounce, ready to bite these men's throats out if necessary. The kick to her face put a quick end to that, breaking her teeth and collapsing her eye, which bled profusely. She staggered backwards, the pointed corner of a cabinet pushing into her lower back. Books with dancers on the covers and pictures in frames shook precariously on top of it. Memories of happier times came crashing to the ground, and as she fell with them, they were erased by the merciless red of her blood. Lying there on the floor, she spared a failing, defeated glance at one of the men, the one with the cigarette in his mouth. He checked the envelope with the money she would have given them anyway. She would have paid them. She just needed to replace those 3 little bills she'd taken, and she would have paid them. Instead, they were taking her daughter, her world, her life, equating her value to those 3 missing bills. It's all my fault. She saw her little feet kick helplessly in the air, her screams becoming more shrill every second, more desperate, calling for her, filling her with the imperative to protect her, to save her. She knew what they'd do to her daughter, what they would make her do to keep collecting their money. Now that she was damaged goods, she saw the future that awaited her little girl as she watched her pretty red dress disappear past the doorway, her screams muffled as the door closed behind that man. They were taking her out there, into the darkness, into the rain, to a future she would have died to keep her away from. Instead, as she lay weak, helpless, aching amidst the scattered remains of their once happy home, she knew her death wouldn't stop the world's cruelty from coming for her child. The cold rain outside seemed to reaffirm this. For a second, for just a second, she gave up. That primal instinct took over her wounded and bleeding body again. It made the pain disappear as she sprinted into the night, into the rain. Animalistic grunts and growls escaped her as she ran down the stairs and down the street, the adrenaline numbing the sting of rainwater in her wounds. All that mattered was her girl. She was everything. They couldn't have her. Empty streets soaked in water, cold fences and concrete buildings looked down at her as if her plight didn't matter, insignificant as she was. There! The car. She'd recognize it anywhere. Its red taillights moved away, took her away. Pulling even more strength from her already exhausted body, she sprinted forward, the water in the sidewalk splashing away from her feet as if afraid of getting in the way of her furious charge. Then she tripped. She fell. Her feet had betrayed her. So many years of practice coordination during her dance classes, and all it had taken had been a second of desperation for her to lose awareness of her limbs as her feet collided into each other, sending her sprawling to the drenched concrete where she banged her head. Darkness. Just a second of it, but too long a delay. Just a few minutes, she thought. I'm too tired. No. She can't see it. She can't see this. She can't see how tired I am. Nothing should break that smile. I'm only playing asleep. Yes, I'm only playing asleep. It was a dream, a bad dream. She would wake up to see her standing over her in the warm, beautiful sunlight with that big, cute, gap-toothed smile, ready to pull her up, reminding her of her reason to live, and she would fight her exhaustion and pounce on her, pulling squeals of surprised laughter from her, and she'd feel strong again. All for her, she thought. She almost smiled as she opened her eyes, only to feel the rain on her again, her soaked clothes, her aching mouth, her swollen eye. And as her weakness, her humanity took over, as the adrenaline drained away, every cut in her body became a reminder that the taillights she saw, distorted, too far away to catch up to now, had taken everything from her. The rainwater looked like a mirror, reflecting the open sky above her, infinite stars, unlimited, no boundary between them. The stars were right here. She could touch them with her toes. She didn't feel the tiny slivers of glass sticking out from her feet. What was physical pain when the pain in her heart had overwhelmed all senses? No, all that she had left to do or feel was this. The moment of the perfect posture, standing on point, ready. Every building in the city down below was her audience, looking up at her, every light a staring eye, waiting in silence, with bated breath for the music to kick in, for the dance to begin. Slowly, she raised her arms, and she could feel it flow through her, the music in her head, those beautiful but sad piano keys in a 3/4 time signature, her last dance, her tribute to her daughter, the love of her life, somewhere underneath the same starry sky. A delicate spin, sending waves across the mirror galaxy. Then she was off, spinning, gliding across the stars, arms together, then open wide, her blood flying from her like rose petals. As she leaped in the air, she felt freedom, her movements reaching a crescendo, a painful freedom, a pain so huge it could eclipse the stars with the touch of her foot. She spun and spun, a dance of despair, despair that would expand and touch every celestial body light years away. Then she jumped, her form perfect, the release and abandon at the climatic end of the dance. She flew across the stars, which seemed to stretch and swallow her up. As she turned in mid-air to gaze up at their beauty one last time, her thoughts reached out toward her baby girl, her smile, her joy, her love. All for her. She was worth it. The impact brought with it oblivion, soothing, sweet, and immediate. Except... she thought, as she stood at the foot of a building, her clothes and body in bloody tatters, cuts, bruises, and glass all over. The sunlight appeared cold and blinding. What had happened? Who was she? All she had was a feeling. But what? As the blood dripped endlessly from her cuts, she wondered, if it was so dear to her, how could she have forgotten it? It seemed wrong, cruel. Then a hand, a tiny hand pulled on her dress, and that word flew into her ears. She turned to find a little girl with beautiful pink hair standing behind her, looking up at her with wonder and curiosity. Around her, in the world, it was like nobody else existed, only that girl. The girl said with confusion. As she began to process this, a man's voice called to the girl. Before she could take her hand, feel her warmth, she spun and hurried away. The man, foggy, colorless, like the rest of the almost invisible crowd that didn't see her and she didn't care to see, said, He wasn't angry. He was worried. Who was he? Who was she? The girl said, pointing at her, earning a confused look from the man, who sighed and looked past her, through her. I'm here, she thought, still unsure if they were actually talking about her, unsure if she really was there. The little girl asked. The man still looked through her. He couldn't see her at all.
遠いところに行っちゃったんだよ。
he answered, taking her hand. She was going to take my hand.
いつ帰ってくるの？
当分、ずっと帰ってこないよ。だからアイラは強くならなきゃ。お母さんがいなくてもちゃんとできるよって。いつかお母さんが帰ってきた時に自慢できるように。
She listened to their conversation, fixated, curious.
アイラはちゃんと自慢できる子になる。
子供。私の子はどこ？
Proud. She was so proud of her child, she thought this as the little girl waved goodbye.
アイラ。
That's what she said her name was. Ira. She'd called her mommy.
そうか。思い出した。
She couldn't remember her face. It seemed obscured, dreamlike, red. But she remembered happier times. She remembered how proud she felt of... She said her name was Ira. She called her mommy.
私はアイラのお母さんだったんだ。
As her memories swirled together in her mind, the happy memories got mixed in with her confusion, with her grief, with a memory that wasn't a memory, but a feeling that she'd lost something important. She didn't remember exactly what had happened, but she remembered the feelings, the grief, the anger, the all-consuming love, and as her body transformed, as her unkempt black hair grew into unnaturally long strands, she thought,
私があの子を守る。誰もあの子を傷つけたりしないように。私が！
Her face twisted, her teeth bared, her eyes vanished. She had become blind anger. She had become grief that devoured all self-control. Back in the present, Ira's eyes fly open, and we realize that the connection that was used to revive her let both Ira and Momo see Silky's memories. And not just that, but feel everything she felt. It was like her very soul passed through them along with her aura. They know now what created this monster that had been trying to swallow them whole. They know where that red dress came from and what it symbolizes. Momo no longer wants to fight her. She stops Okarun from attacking her, pleading for him to stop, to leave her alone. She knows what this woman went through. She knows this woman doesn't deserve to be hurt more than she already has. But unfortunately, Silky is falling apart. Her body is crumbling to pieces. She apologizes to Ira, blaming herself for hurting her instead of protecting her. She realizes she's failed. She can't even see that she's just effectively saved Ira's life. Instead, she's consumed by despair for hurting her, realizing she's become a monster, and she gives up. Giving her life force to Ira means she will now vanish. Worse yet, in a turn of cosmic injustice, the fact she has so many unresolved regrets means Silky won't get to rest in peace. She will not have an afterlife. Her pathetic shape starts deteriorating very quickly. She will fade into the void out of all reality and memory. It will be like she never existed. In any world, the living and the dead, everyone will forget about her. Ira, hearing that strange cat say Silky's life was worthless, knows in her heart that this is not true. She's seen everything. Now she's hearing that whether Silky rests in peace or not is up to her heart, and there's nothing any stranger can do. Letting go of her regrets is a decision only Silky can make, and in her current despair, she can't and won't make that decision. So she's going to fade away. She's going to be forgotten by everyone. It's hopeless. Ira is in shock. She can't reconcile this information. Her eyes shift in denial and disbelief. This is not right. This is not acceptable. What can she do? This is when she remembers her words from when she was a little girl. She wants to be a girl her mom can be proud of. What would that girl do? Silky, on her end, is still consumed by her grief. Her sunny memories of her little girl, instead of warmth, now only bring her regret. She only sees them as reminders of her failure, of her not being enough. I wish I had. Just regrets and regrets. And as she crumbles away into nothingness, she says, more properly, More. There's no joy, only regrets, not realizing she did everything in her power for her little girl. Reaching the summit of her despair, the worst possible thought comes out of her. If you hadn't been born as my child, you would have been so much happier. In her eyes, all she sees are the bloody wrecks of their old home. Everything's broken, bloody, abandoned. The sunlight now only casts her crumbling shadow onto the space. I made you so unfortunate. I'm so sorry. Then she hears steps, like that time her little girl had tried to run toward her before being carried away. Except, no, it's not like that. It's like the steps running toward the door as she got home, ready to burst out, and there are arms around her. She looks down like she did every night when she came from her soul-crushing jobs, almost in stunned shock, a warm embrace, and there's Ira. And she says, "Mommy." Silky sees her as her little girl, her beaming gap-toothed grin looking up at her. "I love you." It reminds her that joy exists. She hesitates. Grief and self-loathing are still trying to cling to her, to pull her back. But then Ira says, "I was the happiest person in the universe." And Silky allows herself to embrace her back, to touch her hair. Suddenly, there they are. The balcony's glass doors are wide open, and she and her little girl are standing there staring up at the stars. No barrier in between, only joy in the restoring starlight. In tears, Ira pleads to whichever deity might be listening, praying for this woman and her little girl who might already be dead too. After a life of untold suffering, Ira says, "Please, so that nobody ever hurts them, take them to a more fortunate, kinder world." And we see this infinite universe, in the middle of which there might be that one world where they might be together and happy. As Silky disappears into thin air, Ira makes one final vow. "I won't forget, I swear." Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I was a blubbering mess after this episode. It really kicked my ass. So this channel is relatively new, so you don't know me that well, but I'm a crier. I ugly cry at emotional moments in movies and TV shows all the time. This episode hit me so hard. Just the thought of it keeps choking me up. When I edit this video, I'll probably have another cry or two. I think this episode used very well the misdirection it set up in the beginning to disarm you, and probably the most important part for me was the honesty with which the story was written. And it's something that I really appreciate about Dandadan. Even in other episodes that might not be as serious as this one, there's that human honesty to it. There's humanity in its humor and its awkward teenage interactions, and yes, in serious topics as this episode touches, it doesn't shy away from humanity. And I think that's why it connected so much with its viewers and the manga's readers. It doesn't coddle you. And it's something I always try to tell other people when we talk about writing. Your characters should never be perfect. They should never be good at everything. They shouldn't be perfectly moral. They should always have failures and regrets, because that's human. On the flip side, while there's room for perfectly evil villains like we explored in my previous video on the Penguin, and we love that sort of villain, there's also room for discovering that the person we thought was an evil person isn't really that evil, just human and flawed and having to deal with a difficult and cruel world. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. You already know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, comment, let me know what you thought. And always remember, even though this world can be cruel and hard and challenging, always try to do a little bit to make it a little nicer, a little kinder. Every little bit that you do adds up. Thank you.